Hola, 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 YouTube. Buenos tardes, buenos noches, buenos dias. It's been a long time since I've been to Mexico, and I'm really feeling like I need to go back there. That warm Caribbean air and all the nice people. Anyways, now that the Leafs are gone, I have time to realize that, oh, I've done a bunch of other stuff too. So we will dive right in because there's a lot of stuff, and I've only got 20% battery life left on this camera, or iPhone, whatever the hell it is. First up, a book I recently finished from the Marvel Universe. Who is the Black Panther? This book takes place sometime after T'Challa has gained the throne of to be the new Black Panther, and he's continuing on with his father's wish of bringing Wakanda more into the rest of the world and not being so secretive, and sharing their knowledge and their technology and all that stuff with the rest of the world. And he's in New York at the unveiling of a Wakanda art exhibit when some sort of terrorist attack erupts, and he gets involved, and then realizes, yeah, maybe this isn't the right time, and so he goes back to Wakanda, um, and uh, and goes about business there. Meanwhile, there's a U.S. Army general who wants Wakanda's technology, and he wants to take it by force. Whereas the kind of Wakanda experts in the government are saying it's going to be way more of a benefit for us to work together, become their allies, and gain what we can through a partnership and friendliness, because this is a country that has been invaded or attempted to be invaded numerous times in the past by much larger forces and nations, and none of them have come through it alive. Even Captain America has been turned away by these Wakandans. So this general sets in plan secretly behind everybody's back a motion to take over Wakanda using their neighboring country, the ruler, I forget his name now. But he's always wanted Wakanda's riches and hates T'Challa, hates the Black Panther, and he's always wanted to invade, but has been powerless to do so. So this general enlists the aid of a Belgian assassin named Ulysses Clow, who has a beef with the Black Panther and his descendants. So he recruits a number of other villains like Radioactive Man and some others like that, and they set this plan in action to invade Wakanda, and it's up to T'Challa and his sister and all of his forces to repel them and stabilize Wakanda's situation. So it was a good book. It revealed a bit of more secrets behind the Black Panther and Wakanda and stuff like that. Not a ton, but a bit more backstory. And I was not familiar with the Black Panther's character at all, really, other than just kind of seeing him and knowing his name. But I'd never really read any stories about him before the Black Panther movie and stuff. So it's always nice to get a bit more info on a lot of these characters that I don't know much about. So that was good. Next one, a book called The Magic Misfits, written by Neil Patrick Harris. Neil Poonhandler, for those who like Harold and Kumar. I read the Nightmares series by Jason Segel, who actually acted with Neil Patrick Harris on the How I Met Your Mother TV show, and I really liked those books. And so I thought, you know what, I really like Neil Patrick Harris, and this is cool that he's written a book that looks like it's right up my alley. And so I thought, yes, I'm going to read that. And it's about a young kid named Carter Locke who grew up in a small red cottage with his parents. As a young boy, his dad taught him magic, and Carter was really good at it. He had really quick hands. He was good at trickery. But then one day his parents didn't come home. So he was left in the care with his uncle Sylvester, or Sly, as they call him, who was nothing but a con man. And he had the same thing. He was, like Carter's father, he was a magician, but used it for nefarious purposes, and he was always traveling around, and now he dragged Carter around with him and got him in on his schemes, and he hated every minute of it. So one day he decides to run away and hops this train and ends up in this small, quaint little town called Mineral Wells. And when he's there, there's a circus in town, BB Bosso's circus carnival thing. And when he goes to visit it, he meets this man named Mr. Vernon, who seems like an actual magician. He does real tricks, and Carter is stumped by this guy. So eventually their paths cross again when Carter enters Mr. Vernon's magic shop, and there he meets Mr. Vernon's adopted daughter, Leela, who also loves magic and is somewhat of an escape artist. And then she meets his friend Theo, who specializes in levitation. And then there's one more girl, I forget her name. She's in a wheelchair and she's really smart, who is another friend of theirs. And they kind of form this little bond, even though Carter doesn't really want to tell them about his past as kind of this shady, not that he ever stole anything, but his shady past with his uncle. And but Mr. Vernon knows there's something up. And the kids find out that this BB Bosso is very corrupt, and his final trick of the carnival's run in Mineral Wells is to make this world-famous diamond disappear, the Star of Africa. And they find out that it's not actually going to be a trick. He's actually going to steal it and replace it with a fake. And so it's up to them and their magic skills to catch him in the act and stop him from doing that. Really cool book, super fast, easy to read, lots of adventure, very innocent, lighthearted stuff, while at the same time being a bit dangerous. You know, I like that kind of stuff. I love kids' books. They're so much more imaginative than adult books, which all seem so... Next, moving right along, just finished this recently, the Predator Omnibus. I love these Aliens Omnibus, Predator Omnibus, Aliens versus Predator Omnibus. It's basically short stories in these books that are adapted, I think, from the Dark Horse Comics stories. And in this, there's three mini stories: Concrete Jungle, Cold War, and Big Game. The first two, Concrete Jungle and Cold War, are related. So in Concrete Jungle, there's these two detectives in New York, Detective Schaefer and Detective Rash, and they're usually work in the drug narcotics, but they get redirected to homicide or something because of some incidents. And while they're out walking the beat on some of their old territory, some drug gang heads get massacred and hung up and skinned, and it's crazy. They start investigating it and eventually lead them to find out that there's some weird sort of alien or aliens in New York during a heat wave, and they're basically hunting humans. And Detective Schaefer is actually the brother of Dutch, who was Arnold Schwarzenegger in the original Predator movie. And he doesn't know where his brother is, and once he comes across this creature, he starts to put two and two together, and as the adventure unfolds, he actually visits the jungle where Dutch killed that first predator and tries to get clues, and the whole thing unravels from there, and how they repel these things from New York City. The second one, Cold War, features these two again. Schaefer's still working in New York, whereas Rash has put the whole thing behind him and moved out to Oregon to live a peaceful life as a small-town sheriff. But fate brings them together again when something crash lands in the frozen wastes of Siberia near an oil pipeline, and the U.S. Army, who got involved in the first story and knows Schaefer's past with these things, basically force him to come to Siberia and help deal with him, and they get up against the Russians, and then they all get up against the Predator, and mayhem ensues in the frozen wastes of Siberia. And then the third story, Big Game, is a total departure from these two. It's a Navajo Indian named Nakai, I think his name was, and he's a corporal in the U.S. Army in New Mexico at a base there. And one day he's on tank duty, and his partner Deedle gets his head blown off by this weird blue ray that comes out of nowhere. And so he's very confused by this, and as he reports the death to his superiors and they go about it, something out there in the desert is doing this, but they can't see it, they don't know what it is, and eventually they discover a spaceship, and from there things unravel again, and this Nakai is amongst his people, fated to be the slayer of this monster from some of their myths and legends, and in the end it's a showdown between the two in the New Mexico desert, and it's a nasty, savage battle, just like I like it. So very good, three very good short stories. Predator gives me chills just like Aliens every time I read a story or see a new movie. It's freaky ass things. Next up, finally saw this, which was fantastic. Venom. I think it got kind of middling reviews, but I loved every minute of it. Venom's one of my favorite superheroes. He's kind of the anti-hero, I guess is what you'd say. But in this movie, a couple named Eddie Brock and Anne Wang are living together in San Francisco. Eddie is a reporter and has this own kind of hard-hitting TV show, investigative journalism, whereas Anne is a lawyer. And while they are going about their lives, there's something happening in space. The Life Corporation is experimenting up in space with some alien samples they've found. And something goes wrong and they come plummeting down to Earth. And although the Life Corporation is able to corral most of the samples, one of them gets away and takes over a host body and jumps bodies as it makes its way to San Francisco, where Life Corporation's headquarters is, and that's where all the other samples are. So Eddie, investigating Anne's laptop, and she's actually a lawyer for the Life Corporation and a bunch of lawsuits they have. He gets on her computer one night behind her back and finds out they have all these lawsuits and something doesn't add up, and then this crash with the samples, and so he goes to interview their head honcho, Carlton Drake, who is the brains behind Life Corporation, and instead of just doing the puff piece that his boss wants him to do, he asks some serious questions about these lawsuits, and the interview is cut short, and gets pissed at him for going behind her back on the laptop. They split up. Eddie's life goes all to hell. Maybe year later, he's kind of living in a small apartment, and a scientist from Life Corporation approaches him and asks for help. She works for Carlton Drake, and he has started human testing on with these alien symbiotes without going through all the proper procedures first, and people are dying. He's basically getting street people and not caring about what happens to them. So her and Eddie go to the Life Corp one night, and he investigates, and in the process, one of the symbiotes gets loose and inhabits him. And although the symbiotes haven't taken to any of the other human hosts, this one really seems to take to Eddie, and they can coexist. And soon enough, it introduces himself to Eddie as Venom, and it gives him these superpowers. And of course, now he's got people chasing him from Life Corp who want this sample back, and eventually Carlton Drake goes to the point of introducing one of the symbiotes to himself, called is it Ravage or Riot, and he plans to go into space with this symbiote and retrieve a comet full of other symbiotes and bring them all to Earth, because they want basically a planet to take over. And so Eddie and Venom have to stop this, and then there's this big fight in the end between these two savage beasts. It's amazing. The effects were so awesome, and the story's so great too. Venom's amazing. Really good movie. I loved every minute of it. Bad reviews. Who listens to critics anymore? Like, seriously, these guys get paid for stuff? Like, it's crazy. And then they recommend all these Oscar movies, which are just basically big pieces of dump. Like, it's crazy. Next up, I don't have a case for it because it's still in theaters, but we went to see Captain Marvel a couple weekends ago, and it was fantastic. I love Brie Larson ever since Scott Pilgrim, so it was cool to see her introduced into the Marvel universe with all the other amazing actors. And so basically there's this woman, a Cree, named Veers, and her commander in her unit is training her for combat, and she's got all these emotions attached to her because she's having all these dreams and visions about a past life she knows nothing about, and it's really throwing her off, and he's trying to teach her to control her emotions and get through it. And then when she goes to meet the Supreme Intelligence, which is the Kree's AI leader or whatever, she assumes the form of an old woman that's featured very prominently in these dreams and visions she's having, and she tells her to control your emotions, or they're going to get the best of you, and you're not going to be at your best, and you won't succeed. Soon after that, they go out on a mission to rescue one of their spies who has been found out, and they walk into a Skrull ambush, and the Skrull are these shape-shifting aliens that are like one of the Kree's biggest adversaries. In the process, she kind of gets kidnapped by the Skrulls, and this Skrull named Talos taps her mind for her memories and stuff, and in the process, she starts to connect some dots a little bit, but eventually she engineers an escape and then takes an escape pod down to Earth, but the Skrulls also land there, so as soon as she gets down, she chases after them, and it leads to this big chase where a certain somebody named Nick Fury, a young S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, gets involved. And it's the mid-90s too, so it's like this cool kind of retro, like Smashing Pumpkins posters on the walls. The cars look amazing. It was very cool. She's wearing a Nine Inch Nails shirt. So they get all caught up in this chasing of Talos, and along the way she finally regains more and more of her memories, remembers who her best friend is, then decides to visit her and get the lowdown on what happened, and she finds out that she was a test pilot for this Project Pegasus, which was this experimental jet engine that could crack the speed of light, I think it was, or the speed of sound, whatever, and this old woman in her dreams, Wendy, was the doctor behind this thing, and she was trying to use this jet engine to help stop wars. And so she finally regains everything, but then Talos shows up and forces her to listen to some evidence, and she finds out that all of this stuff she's learned, all of these things that she thought before she lost her memory, it was all a farce, and Wendy is not who she thought she was, and she was actually quite evil. She was an evil Kree, and the experimental jet engine was actually anything but. It was more of a weapon, and it actually ended up being the Tesseract, which is very cool, links into everything that's going on, and in the end, she and her friends, including Goose the cat, who was a big star of the movie, head up to Wendy's secret base in space and go about setting things right. Very great. Awesome effects, awesome soundtrack, awesome everything. I loved everything about the movie, and I've heard a lot of pissing about Brie Larson and that she's a bad person and her co-stars don't like her and she's a social justice warrior, or what they're talking about now. And I have no idea. I had no idea about any of that. I wish I'd never clicked on the link too, but I don't know what to think of anything, so I just choose to think that I like Brie Larson. So I'm gonna stick with that. Anyways, fantastic movie. Can't wait to see her in Endgame too, and all the other stuff that's going to go on, of course. Next up, Blast from the Past. When I was a kid growing up in the mid-'80s, I was huge on G.I. Joe, Transformers, Mask, Robotech, Voltron. There were so many great cartoons back then. But one of the ones that I always watched, kind of when one of the other ones wasn't on, was more designed for girls at the time. Jem and the Holograms. This is the complete series, 65 episodes over 8 discs of all 3 seasons, and I really liked that show when I was a kid. Not as much as the other ones, of course, because they were all action shoot-em-ups, which was my thing. But this one was very cool, and rewatching it all these years later was awesome, because I kind of forgot a lot of the stuff that went on in it. So basically, there's a young woman named Jerrica Benton whose parents have passed away. They were both in the music industry. Her mom was a singer, her dad was the owner of Starlight Records, and he also designed this kind of futuristic synthesizer that was capable of projecting holograms and stuff like that, and it had an artificial intelligence inside of it. So upon his death, he left Starlight Records and this console, which he dubbed Synergy, in Jerrica's possession. So as she got older, she decided to start a band using Synergy to make a hologram over her, giving her this alternate persona of Jem. So Jem and the Holograms, and the rest of the Holograms were girls that she grew up with as a kid, including her sister Kimber. So they go about, they take the world by storm with their music, and they also support an orphanage that they run called Starlight House, which is for young girls, and all of the profits they make from the band goes into supporting themselves as well as Starlight House and all the girls that are in it. so they're busy that way, but then they also have other hijinks that ensue. A rival band called the Misfits, which are three nasty girls, and eventually a fourth joins on after. And their nasty business manager, Eric Raymond, they're always trying to do things to make themselves more visible than the Gem and the Holograms, climb over them in the charts, just be better, and it's always causing the Holograms headaches, and gets them into all sorts of misadventures. And then later on in the series, another band from across the pond in England come to North America and take the world by storm, called the Stingers, who consist of Riot, Rapture, and Minx. And the ladies all love Riot, and he takes a liking to Gem, and so then that causes more strife between her and her boyfriend Rio. So there's all these things going on, and lots of misadventures, but in the end it all wraps up tidily. Every kind of little the rivalries between the bands, the future of the Starlight House, and all the girls, it all kind of wraps up neatly in the final episode, and a very positive kind of TV show, and very, especially back in the day when things weren't built up a lot. Things just were the way they were, but it really pushed art and music and dance and all of the things that are so important these days that are getting cut and stuff like that, right? So it's a very cool show, and kind of surprising in that way too. So next thing, last few things are games. Jimmer and I recently finished playing this, although we didn't beat it, Marvel Ultimate Alliance for the PS3. Story is Doctor Doom has somehow managed to steal Odin's power and is going berserk, and he's going to wipe out the Earth and make it his own thing, and before he moves on to more even far-reaching plans. And you are a team of many Marvel heroes that you unlock along the way and can upgrade and stuff like that, and you have to go about stopping him. The game was good, but it was the graphics were a bit choppy. It could get a bit glitchy in places, and then it was also, the upgrading system was weird. I didn't understand it, and it was also really hard, like not hard challenging hard, but just hard, impossible hard. We battled through and got right to the end, but just couldn't. We ran into the Dark Fantastic Four and then Doctor Doom after, and we couldn't even get through one of the Fantastic Four. Like, we got our asses handed to us. And it was just one of those games where you knew you weren't, no matter how many times you did it, you just weren't going to beat it. So we kind of hung up the skates on that one and put it away. So it was worth the play, but I wouldn't spend more than, a few bucks on it used, unless you want to pay a lot of money just to be really frustrated. So that was that. Next up was one of the best games I played, LittleBigPlanet, also on the PS3. The story behind LittleBigPlanet is that all of the thoughts and ideas and dreams that humanity has every day and every night, they all float out of our heads and go to this magical place in the sky called LittleBigPlanet. And that causes some very wacky things to happen, very wacky environments and beings and things. And you star as Sackboy, who lives in LittleBigPlanet, and something is happening. Somebody's trying to take over LittleBigPlanet, and so then you are tasked with traveling through all the different lands and helping people and finding out what's going on and stopping it. And it's nice because this is a two-player co-op game, so I mean you can play it on your own, but it's so much more fun with somebody else. So me and James had a really good time playing this game, and all of its zany visuals and audio too. It's crazy. It's a really fun game, and there's two more of them too. So we can't wait to play those. Last one, Monster Madness: Grave Danger for the PS3. This is kind of like a hack and slash game. You just wander through the levels and beat monsters to death, and the story is that there's this kid, Zach, who's got this girl Carrie over to study one night, and he's humming and hawing about, I gotta tell Carrie how I feel about her. But then his buddy Andy rings the doorbell and comes in and just wants to party and go skateboarding or whatever. And then after that, this hot girl named Jennifer, with massive pazankas, shows up and wants Zach to get her homework finished for her. And then the doorbell rings one more time, and Zach's like, who the hell could this be? Could this not get any worse? I just want to tell this broad how I feel about her. Doorbell rings. It's a horde of zombies. So then these 4 characters then have to traipse through the game and beat all these zombies to death and find out how the zombies came to be, why they're attacking the town, and how they put a stop to it. It's a very fun game. It's one of those hack and slash where you go through the level, you find where you're supposed to go, and you collect all the little goodies along the way, and you can also, there's so many weapons you can purchase, and you can upgrade them too. So it's not just the same thing every level. It's you kind of evolve as you go along, and it's very neat. Graphics are a little rough around the edges, maybe not too bad, but they could have used a little extra polish. And the sound, especially during the cutscenes, which are like comic book style, which is very cool. The sound was very shrill and loud, and a little tinny or something like that. But other than that, like those two little negatives are just far outdone by how fun the game is. So we had a lot of fun playing it. It was one of the games that we were kind of like LittleBigPlanet. We're just like, yeah, let's play Monster. We were just all over it. So it's always nice when you find games that you just love playing. Some games sometimes can be a chore, whether because you don't quite like them as much as you thought you would, or they're super hard and you don't want to go about it. But that was just a game that is just like, yep, fire it up, let's do this, and do it. We did. We got through it. We beat it, as we do most games, and it was entirely worth the $5 or whatever I paid for it. So, yeah. So I think, yeah, I think that's all. No, it's not. Wait a minute. Also forgot recently a couple of albums I've been listening to. Megadeth. So far, so good. So what? Their 3rd studio album, I guess, came right after the last one I mentioned, Peace Sells, But Who's Buying? More of the same. Maybe not quite as good as Peace Sells, but like very close, and very, very similar, which is great. That's a good thing for this band. Fierce riffs, Mustaine's lyrics, Mustaine's voice. Just like Metallica, you can't get enough early Megadeth. Even though I like Megadeth better, it's just they're just awesome. As simple as that. The other one, The Pursuit of Happiness, their Icon Greatest Hits sort of collection, a band that formed, I think, in Toronto in the mid to late 80s. They were kind of I guess they would probably be considered an alternative band, but they kind of had all sorts of elements. They had classic rock, they had alternative, they had these kind of bojangly songs with female harmonies, and they were just all over the place. Addictively good to listen to, and the lead singer Moberg, his lyrics are like, most songs, it's all about interpersonal relationships and stuff like that, but the way he goes about crafting the lyrics is very, makes you think. It's not beat around the bush, but it's like they're very craftily, stealthily written, and every time you hear a song, you get another little kind of, oh, that's a cool way of saying that, like it's they're very cool lyrics, and I can't believe I'm only starting to listen to them now. Like, I always knew of them in high school and stuff like that, but there was always something else I wanted more, and so I never got around to picking up any of their music, but I have it now, and it's amazing. So yeah, that was fantastic, and yeah, I think I'm now finally out of stuff. So I'm sure I'll be back in the near future with maybe a list that's not quite so long, just so that I don't post a 28-minute video that nobody's gonna watch anyway. So, but hey, why not? Have a great night or morning. Whenever I post this, have a great whatever.